Hi, my name is Jeff Ciardo, and I'm the author of Head First WordPress. And today I'm going to walk you through a basic installation of WordPress in a shared hosting environment. So before we get started, we need to get WordPress downloaded onto our local machine. So if you go to wordpress.org, you should be presented with a couple of download options. You can either click the tab up at the top or select the main WordPress download button, which is what we're going to do here. And this will take you to the download page where you can start downloading WordPress. And by default, it's going to come down as a zip archive, and then Mac OS X will automatically unzip that for us. But as you can see here, all of the files we need to go up on the server are right there on our desktop now. So speaking of servers, we have to put this up on the web somewhere, and we need a web server to host it. And there are a few different types of hosting. The one we're going to use today is a shared hosting, and you can find shared hosting on sites like DreamHost and Media Temple. And this is where your site is on the same server as possibly hundreds of other sites, and you all share the resources, and it's very inexpensive. The next type of hosting is what's called VPS, or virtual private servers. And in this type of hosting, you have a small segment of a larger server, but there's less people per server. It's also more expensive. And finally, we have managed and cloud hosting, and this can be the most expensive, but it also gives you the most options in terms of scaling and growing your site. So for simplicity's sake, we're just going to go ahead and do a shared hosting install for WordPress. So the first thing we have to do is get our files up onto the server. Now I've already created a subdomain for my blog, and I've already copied the WordPress files up into the directory. And you just want to make sure that all of the WordPress files in the folder you downloaded make it up onto the server, and that the index.php file is in the root of your server, so that when you go to blog.hungrycitizen.com or whatever your blog name is, the server will look at that index file first. So we're in the right spot and we're ready to start installing WordPress. Now, if we browse to our blog, we should see the default configuration warning for WordPress. And basically this is saying, yes, WordPress files are here, and you need to create a configuration file to get started. So here we're going to need to add some database details so we can move ahead with the WordPress installation. Now, WordPress uses MySQL as its database backend, and this is where all your posts and pages and everything you upload to WordPress from a content standpoint is stored. So on our hosting, we have cPanel installed, which allows us to create users and databases for our data. So the first thing we need to do is go in and create a database and a user for that database. And the process for this may differ depending on your host, but cPanel is a widely used hosting panel, so you should be able to, so this should make sense to most people. You want to make sure you're also selecting really secure passwords for your database. These aren't passwords you're going to have to enter a lot, so pick something that is long, has random strings, letters, numbers, special characters, all that stuff to keep your database secure. And one last thing we have to do before we move on is we have to give our new user full privileges to the database so that it can read and write to that database. And once we've done that, we can go in and fill out these forms in our WordPress config. So our database name and database user are both the same, even though they're two different things, we named them the same. And then we can leave our database host at localhost and refer to your hosting documentation for that particular value, because some hosting has different values there. So once we proceed, we can see that WordPress can't create the configuration file on its own, and that's because we don't allow WordPress to write to our file system at this point. So we're going to have to go create this config.php file on our own. You'll see there's a config-sample.php, and all we have to do is duplicate this and then rename it to WordPress config.php. And this is where we'll store all of our database connection information so that WordPress can talk to the database. And then all we have to do is copy this text, since WordPress has built the file for us, and paste it into our WordPress config. And here I'm using TextMate as a text editor, but you could just as easily use any text editor that you have. Just make sure you're in plain text mode and not in rich text mode. And I would definitely stay away from Microsoft Word or word processors for editing these files. So all we have to do is delete what's in that file and replace it with what we copied, and then save. And as you can see up here, you'll see all the connection details that we had entered on the previous page in the form. So once this is saved, we should be able to run the install, and if everything goes as planned, we should be greeted with a WordPress welcome page. At this point, WordPress is installed and we can start adding details about our blog. So we're going to give our blog a title called The Hungry Citizen, and then we're going to change this username. You don't want to use the default admin username in WordPress. You want to change that to something else, as it's fairly well known that admin is the default and it becomes a security risk down the line, and we don't want to put our blog at risk like that. So just pick something other than admin. It really can be anything. Just make sure you can remember it and that it doesn't have that, and that it's not just admin. And just like before, we want to try to select secure passwords. For this example, we're just going to do a quick password, but try to make your passwords as secure as possible. Letters, numbers, special characters. Finally, enter an email. WordPress will email you like a confirmation that your blog has been set up. And this is also where status emails from your blog will go to let you know you have comments and things like that. So if everything works out, you'll get a success message and then you'll be prompted to log in. And here you can log into your new WordPress site and start blogging. So when you get in, you should be presented with the basic dashboard. All the sidebar content will load. And if you click on the blog title in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you out to the blog. And as you can see here, our blog is all set up and we're ready to start writing on the Hungry Citizen blog.